I'll start the program, and we'll thank Jill in a moment when she comes in. So again, good to see everyone here this afternoon, and guests that came here from Sinai Temple, from the city. Good to have you with us as well, along with David Siegel, who's an RK like me, a rabbi's kid, whose father is one of the founders of the Masorti conservative movement in Israel, together with my father. So it's very exciting to have you here, and the deputy speaker of the parliament and the director of ELNET in Europe. And the panel is going to be led by Heidi Bash-Harod. In ELNET, what I could say about it from the little that I understood and read about, since Jill connected me to the organization and its fabulous work, I would describe it maybe as like the European AIPAC. Would that be okay to say, kind of? Okay, that's what I understood at least, where they go to parliaments and work with European parliaments to show support to Israel. As an Israeli who's been watching, the news after October 7th, I've seen all the delegations of European parliamentarians who go support Israel, and ELNET is facilitating that. And I think it's very important work that we understand and recognize what goes on in Europe in terms of that and the relationships with Israel. We have a lot to learn as American Jews. And again, I really want to thank Jill Ruby-Waba from the bottom of my heart for all you've done here today.
Sorry, I got up here a little bit late too. But I just want to thank everybody again for coming. This is something that's very, very dear to my heart. My father, bless his heart, I took over his seat on the board of ELNET after he passed a couple of years ago. But he became involved with the board with ELNET when it first started. He knew about the work that David had done as his work with Israel. Now I can't speak. I blubber when I have to speak in front of all of you. You know this. But it's really, really dear to him because he saw an opportunity in in Europe, because nobody was really advocating for Jews in Europe. And he saw the work that they were starting to do, that Larry Hochberg, who's the founder of ELNET, and David were starting to do, advocating for Israel in Europe, and wanted to be part of it. So he became very involved with it. So it's very dear to my heart to continue that tradition. So we have some other board members who are here today. And I'm so grateful that Marta and Senator Kaminsky came here all the way, and David Siegel came here all the way from everywhere they came from to be here today to share their stories. So thank you so much. Rabbi, were you done? Okay. And thank you to Heidi for moderating.
Hi everyone, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for being with us today. Jill, I want to again thank you for bringing these distinguished guests to the South Bay. These are conversations that we usually have to travel up to LA for. So this is really a privilege to be able to be together on Shabbat and to talk about such current affairs. So thank you for bringing the speakers and ELNET and for hosting us today. I personally, I'm grateful and so excited to have this conversation. As Americans in this room, we know that the relationship between Israel and the United States is a very significant one. And thankfully, we find ourselves in a moment where our president and his administration continue to stand with Israel from a basis of shared values and interests. And we know that there are many rising political leaders who do not see Israel as a strategic or ideological ally. Here, most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with AIPAC, as the rabbi mentioned, which is the guardian of the military alliance between Israel and the United States, lobbying for pro-Israel policies in Congress, security, funding, and countering Iran, which is very relevant, of course, in our moment right now, and supporting candidates who share the policy objectives of AIPAC. But our discussants today are here to share with us their role in securing strong alliances between Israel and European countries, and between Israel and the EU as a whole. We're going to learn from them the different trends of support for and rejection of Israel in parts of Europe, and some of this reason for the current state of affairs. And of course, we're going to discuss the Iran-US-Israel war, the Israel-Hezbollah war, and how these arenas are opportunities to observe shifting alliances within Europe. With Russia as its close neighbor, the Russia-Ukraine war and Russia on its own are other factors to take into consideration when European leaders make decisions on their Middle East policy. So it's going to be a fascinating time together. And I'm going to introduce our distinguished guests. So to my farthest left is Senator Michał Kamiński. He is the Deputy Speaker of the Senate of the Republic of Poland. He served 3 terms in the Polish Parliament and 3 terms in European Parliament. He co-founded the State Thought Institute think tank. He is the author of the political thriller August 15 and co-author of The End of Law and Justice. Senator Kamiński is an advocate for stronger Polish-Israeli and EU-Israeli relations and was involved in efforts to designate Hezbollah's military wing as a terrorist organization in the European Parliament. Thank you for doing that, Senator Kamiński. He is fluent in Russian, English, and German, and has a background in journalism and radio broadcasting. And maybe we'll also have an opportunity to talk about your Jewish ancestry as well, as I was told before meeting you today. Marta Kubica, who's right here, is the CEO of the Warsaw-based Central and Eastern Europe CEE, called the CEE, Office of the European Leadership Network, ELNET, where she fosters diplomatic relationships between Israel and CEE countries. With over 18 years of experience, Marta applies her educational background in Jewish studies and political science to forge meaningful people-to-people ties between Israel and the European countries under her purview, which include Poland, the Visegrad Four, the Baltics, and Finland. Prior to joining ELNET, Marta built her diplomatic knowledge by supporting top officials at the Embassy of Israel in Poland and the Embassy of the United States in Warsaw. And finally, right here to my immediate left is David Siegel. He's the president of the U.S. affiliate of ELNET, the European Leadership Network. He is a former Israeli diplomat involved in foreign policy formulation at the highest levels. He served as consul general to the Southwest United States and chief of staff to 3 of Israel's ambassadors to the United States, among several other senior roles in the U.S. In his capacity at the Israeli embassy in D.C., David was Israel's voice to the Washington Press Corps and liaison to U.S. Congress. He also served as a commander in the Israel Defense Forces. Thank you for your service in the IDF, David. So, need to be in a position where I can see you all and see you all. Okay. David, could you briefly share with us what is ELNET and why is it important for Israel's security today and always?
Sure. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you all for being here with us, and I want to thank our guests, Senator Kamiński and Marta Kubica, who came all the way from Poland to be with us. I'm only here from New York, so not that far. So ELNET was created almost 2 decades ago, to be exact, 17 years ago. And it was created by some of the board members of AIPAC, who saw that in the United States things are well covered, many challenges, but there's a very strong community involvement here in the United States, and it wasn't the case in other countries like Australia, Canada, certainly Europe. And their example led to these organizations in those various countries. And in Europe, it was a slow and gradual process of building a pro-Israel European community, not offshoots of the United States, not offshoots of Israel, but genuine pro-Israel voices in Europe that believe that Europe and Israel share very deep common interests and certainly common values as a civilization. And 17 years later, we have 6 offices in Europe, all full-time offices, some led by non-Jewish leaders that believe in this cause. We're a very small organization, but we have huge impact. We have brought more delegations of European leaders, or any leaders, to Israel more than any other organization that I know of, including the big ones, and we're small. We're roughly a $10 million organization. I think there are some Jewish organizations with hundreds of millions out there without getting into all the details. But being a small organization, we're able to bring a delegation of European leaders to Israel just about once every second week. Once every second week since October 7th means roughly 60 delegations from 30 European countries, all to the front lines, to the Gaza corridor, area around Gaza where the October 7th devastation took place, but also to the north and to other key sites in Israel, so that these leaders learn through their own eyes and their own experience what the realities are in Israel, very, very far from what they read or what they see in social media and in the press. So that's our purpose, and our goal is, of course, to strengthen those relationships over time. One more thing I'll say, and then I'll stop, is that people are not aware of how important Europe is to Israel. Europe is Israel's largest market, largest trade partner, largest source of both our imports and destination for Israel's exports, and more including defense exports now, because the threat of Russia means that Europe is waking up, and the threat of the United States moving away from NATO and from Europe is making them even more alarmed. So having Israel as a partner on cybersecurity, on defense, on resilience is very, very important, and it's important to Israel. The future in America is not that stable right now, as you know. You just saw the vote of the Democratic senators. 40 of 47 American Democratic senators voted against defense equipment for Israel that Israel already purchased. This is unbelievable. So we're going to have to diversify, and we're going to have to make sure that in this country things are as strong as possible, but also in other key markets around the world that Israel needs, and that's why ELNET exists.
So David, I have another follow-up question for you. Based on everything that you just told us, and knowing that the Iran war, especially in the United States, wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms, how can you give us like an insider's assessment of the Iran war, but looking at through all the things that you just told us, what is the significance of this moment in time?
Well, it's a very significant moment, and it's a moment fraught with many, many challenges, but also opportunities as well. We're in a moment of vast change in the world, globally, in the Middle East, in Europe, in the United States, and in Israel as well. So everything is up for grabs, and we have to make sure that we are both on the right side and that we're able to form new alliances in the world and in the Middle East that will help Israel and will help the region deal with the ongoing threat of a nuclear Iran. Iran isn't going anywhere. The hopes of regime change are not going to happen tomorrow morning, and they may happen in 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, but we can't count on that. The war is, although the kinetic side of the war may seem to be over temporarily, right now, you'll look at the news and you'll see that there's a crisis every moment. Now the Iranians are shooting at ships again after Trump said yesterday that the strait is open. Now the strait is back closed again. Trump, in 2 days, it's the end of the deadline for the ceasefire, which is Israel's Independence Day, by the way, on the 22nd. Will he extend the ceasefire? Will the United States go back to resuming, military attacks on Iran? We don't know, but what we do know is that it won't be an overnight thing. This is not an instant microwave solution in and out. This could take a long, long time, and it will have ups and downs and crises and getting back together around the table. The long and short of it is it's a challenging time, and Israel's facing Hezbollah in the north and the Houthis in Yemen and Iran and everything else. So we need to make sure that Israel is as protected with as many friends as possible, and we'll talk about the other challenges because there's a lot to discuss.
Thank you. So Senator Kaminsky, Michal, I'm going to take it over to you. So as David just said, this is a very complicated time, right? And so there's many political and military theaters going on right now, and it's all interconnected, and understanding it at your 6 o'clock news is not really possible. So I want for you to help us unpack and understand what's happening in Europe vis-a-vis the ongoing active conflicts in the Middle East and how they're connected to what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. So let's start with this. We're seeing a fascinating geopolitical development. On one side, we see Ukraine proactively assisting Gulf partners to down drones, and Eastern European states being very vocal about how Russia is actively assisting Iran. And I don't know that it would have been believed if it weren't for the fact that Iran started sending drones and missiles to the Gulf countries as well. I don't know if anyone really anticipated that. And President Zelensky was ready to respond. So the UK is providing logistical support for US operations. And then on the other hand, parts of Western Europe, especially Spain and France, are wavering on the transatlantic alliance. But then throw the other thing that there was a French soldier who was just killed as part of UNIFIL, and Macron is now, wagging his finger at Hezbollah and all these things. Okay. And saying for the Lebanese government to bring Hezbollah under control, which is ridiculous, as we know, because they can't. So from your point of view, how deep is this rift in Europe? And can you also share with us a little bit about when did this rift start to begin? So all those things I just said, however, wherever you want to take it, and whatever seems most relevant to share with us.
Thank you.
Or just take mine.
Thank you very much for your invitation. First of all, I would like to tell you how deeply honored I am to have the opportunity to speak to you, to Jewish community here in the United States, the community which is very close to my heart. As a Pole, I grew up in a family in which we cherished Polish and Jewish heritage. My grandfather, who was 100% Polish, my grandmother, not, but my grandfather was 100% Polish. When I asked him, how many Germans you killed during the war? I was very young at that time. My father answered me, I killed more Poles than Germans. I was surprised and asked him why. And he said, because I was a member of a special unit which was designed to kill the Polish Smalcowniks, those Poles who collaborated with Germans selling Jews. So my grandfather was in the special unit which was protecting the Jews with arms during the war and killing their own compatriots, other Poles, for helping Germans to kill the Jews. I grew up in the tradition in which the brotherhood between Jews and Poles is something which I was taught to cherish. And today I'm here defending Israel and defending Jewish people, not only in Poland, but in whole Europe. Because now we are facing a completely new phenomenon. You asked me when it started. It started when we thought that we combat almost successfully the old-style anti-Semitism. We are quite well equipped how to fight against this old-style, religiously motivated, nationalistically motivated anti-Semites. We know how to deal with them. But suddenly, I call it, my friends know it, I call it suddenly the vegetarian anti-Semitism appeared. The vegetarian anti-Semitism is underlining, no, we love Jews, we don't have anything against the Jewish people, but we want to have Israel to be destroyed, or at least yes, we acknowledge the Jewish people, they have right to have their own state, but they don't have right to defend it, which is a quite empty declaration, yeah? So that's why I call it a vegetarian anti-Semitism. And it's widespread all over Europe. Today, Spain, France, all those countries are very, very happy to jump whenever it is an opportunity to attack Israel, to ban Israeli products, to develop some new ideas against Israel. And I'm starting almost every meeting I have back in Poland or in Europe. I'm starting with the words, you will understand. The people in Europe don't understand. I'm saying them. We are sitting safe here, and we are safe here. We can discuss whatever we want to discuss, only because as we speak, the brave Israeli soldiers are defending us. Because I'm telling to sometimes very stupid Europeans, the Israeli defense forces are defending Europe, are defending your families, are defending your children, not only Israel. This word appeasement, it came from 30s, when the West wanted to appease Adolf Hitler. We had actually the same arguments we hear today when they are talking sometimes about Hezbollah, sometimes about Iran, sometimes about Russia. Let's discuss with them. Let's understand what their problems are. Don't be aggressive, and so on. Piłsudski, the leader of Poland of that time, who was actually regarded as a friend of Jewish people and was hated by the Polish nationalist right, Piłsudski proposed to the Friends in 1935, shortly before he died. He proposed France and Poland could attack Germany right now. 2 years after Hitler took power. We, Poland, we had a very strong army at that time. France as well. Hitler was not ready to fight. We proposed the war against Germany in 1935. The French said, no. Stupid Poles, you are aggressive, you hate Germans, and so on. It took them a couple of years to prepare the army and to attack us and then to attack France. And actually we've been betrayed, as you maybe know from history. So today, I'm so shocked that the Western countries, they didn't understood the lessons of history. We think that it can't repeat, so come to Israel. Thanks to Marta and thanks to ELNET, not only me, because I'm a devoted friend of Israel, but many other politicians who were neutral towards Israeli issues, they had a chance to visit this wonderful country. But as I witnessed one of the delegations just after these terrible attacks, when we saw with our own eyes the blood on the floors of kibbutzes, I saw it. And I heard the story of one lady. She spoke with me in Russian, and she told me that she was keeping her child in the couch, and the terrorists, they're sitting behind her, and she was holding her child and asking the child to be quiet. And I was shocked because my grandfather, with tears in his eyes, was telling me the story of Holocaust like that. The Jewish mothers were holding their kids and asking them not to give any noise. I was shocked that after 80 years, this happened again. It shouldn't. But tell it to the politicians in Western countries. Tell it to Democrats in the American Senate. Now it could repeat, and it's repeating all over and over. When I spent 11 years in the European Parliament, I organized exhibitions, I organized the public hearings to convince Europeans not to pay for so-called Palestinian state. I took translations of the books they are spreading using European money to the kids. At the schools, when they are teaching about killing the Jews and they are teaching the hatred towards Jews from the very beginning, and they call it education. They call it education, and they are using European money for such kind of education. Who will grow up from such an education? New generations of terrorists. They don't understand it in Western Europe, so sometimes we have to be loud, we have to be courageous, and we have to work very, very hard, because the American system is a bit simpler, and it helped you influence political progress when you are well organized and you have money. In Europe, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. European laws are very restricted. We cannot support financially our friends or use our money politically against our opponents. It's absolutely forbidden in Europe. We have to work very, very precise, very delicate, and ELNET is doing all this job. ELNET is building this network across Europe to help Israel, to protect Israel. And this is the work I am absolutely legitimately comparing to the work of the special forces of IDF who are working behind the enemy lines. Because unfortunately, today's Europe looks like behind the enemy lines.
Thank you, Michal. So, yes. So just to make sure I understand the points, that the rift is deep. There's definitely a divide between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. But wait, let me sum up your points, because then I have a question for Marta.
Yeah, I will short. I promise I will be short this time. Yes, there is a deepening rift between the Western and Eastern Europe. Always, also because we understand and we love United States of America. I'm sorry to be so simple. Yes, we are very originally, by definition, we are pro-American. We know that twice in the last 100 years, USA saved Europe from Europe.
So, and an interesting point that you made up that maybe we're not aware of as an American audience is that sort of the way things function in Europe, very different than here, that there really is no mechanism to undo the rift, except for, and ELNET is filling that gap, and it's very important. So this is a perfect segue to what I want to ask Marta about, because so my background is in Middle East history and studies, and so I always think about how the governments of the Middle East, in back alleys, behind closed doors, they're making deals with Israel all the time, but on the street they foment anti-Semitism and all sorts of things. And I kind of feel it's happening in Europe right now, where they're ready to condemn Israel for all sorts of crimes against humanity, but then they're buying all the defense, military weaponry and everything. And so it really concerns me about how long can the government speak out of two corners of their mouths. And what's interesting to me about the work you're doing is really focusing on people-to-people relations and interaction. So I wonder if you could share with us how you're doing that in Poland, but also across Europe through the vehicle of ELNET.
Sure, thank you so much. Thank you, Jill, thank you, Rabbi. It's really a big pleasure to be here. I have to tell you that meetings in the communities are my favorite ones when I come here to speak about my work. People-to-people relationship, I think it's absolutely the most important. That's why we really invest a lot of our work and resources in making sure that Israel has friends in Europe in the high places. October 7th really showed us a real strength of our network. I joined ELNET 7 years ago. Between 2022 and now we brought to Israel over 150 policymakers and opinion makers just from our region. And when I talk about Central Eastern Europe, I mean Poland, Czech Republic, Finland, 3 Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and Romania. Those are the countries that we've been working with, and we've been bringing policymakers, opinion makers, and journalists to Israel from. Most of those people on October 7 and on October 8 reached out to us. First of all, asking how are our friends in Israeli office, because they had a chance to meet them during their delegations. They were asking, is there any way they can help? Many politicians reached out to me either asking, can you help us draft some kind of statement of support, or they have drafted statements of support and passed them in their parliaments on their own, and then they were very proud to send me a link or a tweet that they did it. So we could really see that the strength of our network in the, I would say, darkest moment in the recent Israeli history. So this is what we do, and the question is how we do it, because I think this is very interesting and this is very different than many other organizations. First of all, we start with listening. We listen to what those countries we work with have troubles with, or what are the problems that they would like to solve, what are their biggest concerns. Because when you make our work about them, not about Israel, it's so much more effective. If Estonia wants to rebuild their early warning system. We connect them to the home front command people in the Israeli army. So again, they have contact with Israeli experts, and the solution to their biggest concerns come from Israel. But it's not about Israel. It's not, talking points from the Israeli foreign ministry. It's not the traditional hasbara as we know it, and we know it's not really very effective. So I think this is what makes us very different. And people really appreciate it. People really, really appreciate it. Another very important thing that we do is how we target the people that we reach out to, because of course we cannot reach out to everyone. Only our region has almost 1,000 members of parliament in all the countries. So of course we cannot work with everyone. We try to make sure we have 10% of a parliament in every country. Our friend Poland is the largest and the most, I would say, divided right now. But we do have very strong friends in Poland, like Senator Kamiński. We make sure that we work with people from across the political aisle. We engage right, center, left. We're not engaging, extreme right or extreme left, but we engage younger politicians, seasoned politicians, men, women. It's very important for us to make sure to think beyond political cycles and to make sure that whoever will be in the next government in the country of X, we will have friends there. So I would say this is our method, and we've been very successful in reaching out to people early in their political careers, before they became very important, before they started, before they were offered ministerial positions, and before they had a chance to really form very strong opinion about Israel and what's going on in the Middle East. Because at the end of the day, people defend what they know. And once you go to Israel, once you understand it's a completely different country than what you see on television or on the internet, it's really hard to be anti-Israeli. Once you see the freedom, once you eat the food, once you understand geography, history, and politics. So this is how we do it, and that's why we've been very, very effective. And before I finish, I want to mention that in case of our office, roughly 70% of people that we bring to Israel have never been there before, and 100% of those who've been to Israel with us want to return. That's what we know from our post-delegation surveys.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. Do you have a counterpart in Western Europe speaking to the rift? Because it sounds like you've got it covered in Eastern Europe. But is there a Marta in Italy or Spain or France?
Absolutely. So ELNET has offices across Europe, full-time offices like David mentioned. We have an office in London, Paris, Berlin, Brussels, Rome, and an office in Israel. And my colleagues are working really tirelessly, engaging policymakers in their countries. What you see in the media is the very surface of it. The real politics happen behind the scene, in closed rooms and in trusted circles. What's very difficult right now in Europe that you might not be aware of is that Israeli politicians, especially in the West, are very much isolated. Israeli diplomats are not sometimes excluded from the meetings or the events. But this is where ELNET and our network comes in, because we can be in the rooms that might be hostile to Israeli diplomats. And our colleagues are also trying to be very creative in engaging people. Like my colleague, who's our director in Rome, has been working with the Vatican and the bishops. Because they're very influential there. Every country has a different, influential groups. So we've been engaging with all of them. I would like to mention one thing that I think will really give you a good understanding why our work is crucial in Europe, not only now but in general. I recently came back from Israel a few days before the recent war started. I was with a delegation of young members of parliament from the Baltics and Finland and Poland. And after they left, I stayed for a couple days, and I had a meeting with the Europe division at the Israeli Foreign Ministry, who told me that it's so much harder for the Israeli diplomats to work in Europe in countries where ELNET is not present.
Thank you, Marta. Europe isn't that big of a continent, theoretically speaking, meaning land. I'm just there's such a going back to the rift. There's such a divide between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. Is it proximity to Russia? Is it the media that people in Western Europe are getting? Like, what explains that there's such a different understanding about what this moment is telling us about our future?
I had the honor to be a Secretary of State for the late President Kaczynski, a great friend of Israel as well. The Polish president, who maybe you heard, died in the air crash near Smolensk. I was his Secretary of State, and I actually almost died in this crash. It was an accident that I didn't embark this plane. So when the war in Georgia started, I organized a trip of presidents of Central and Eastern Europe and Baltic states to Georgia, to President Saakashvili. And my president had a speech in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, then back in 2008, when he said, "Today it's Georgia, tomorrow it will be Ukraine, and day after tomorrow my country, Poland." And he was right. We understood it. Everyone who grew up in the country so much touched by history as Poland, you understand that you have to be very careful for your neighbors from eastern side, for your neighbors from western side. We are really, really concerned today that 30% of Germans are ready to vote for the AfD party, which is a party of a very, very, let's say, dubious contacts with the Nazi past of Germany. Today, Putin is openly saying that the largest tragedy of this 20th century was the collapse of Soviet Union. You know, for him, it was not Holocaust. It was the collapse of Soviet Union. It was the largest, the biggest tragedy of the 20th century. And he's saying it as a president of a country in which so many Jews were murdered, in which so many Russians were murdered during the Second World War. But no, it was not the biggest tragedy. The collapse of Soviet Union was. We are living in this part of the world in which we understand what it means when the rules are no more applied to international law. And that's why we see so many proximities with Israel, which is treated very, very unfairly on international stage. I don't understand why you don't ask the question if, for example, USA has right to defend itself. No one is boring with that question, yeah? Or smaller countries, but only in the case of Israel, the people are starting to ask and discuss the question of the right to defense. We've been denied the right to defense in 1939, actually, because we've been left alone. And we've been attacked from both sides, from Germany and from Russia, and we've been destroyed. 3 million Jews, 3 million Poles, 6 million citizens of Poland was killed during the war. So we understood it because everyone, when you are in Warsaw, when you are in Poland, you are touching this history. You are touching it. When you are in Auschwitz, you see, because it's still standing there, you can see what people can do to other people in a very organized way, not as a crazy criminal, but as a whole structure which was designed solemnly to kill people, to kill whole nation. And they dare to say that Holocaust is not unique. How it's not unique? There is no other event in history such like that. And today we are only 80 years after that. Only 80 years, it's not so so long. And the people don't understand the need for strong defense, from strong alliances, and they don't understand that, again, I will come to ELNET, and about this rift between left and west and east. In Poland, unfortunately, traditionally in Poland, left was very pro-Israeli because right was anti-Semitic. So the left was very pro-Jewish, traditionally. Now it absolutely turned. The most of the right, most, not all, but most of the right in Poland today, the conservatives are very pro-Israeli and very pro-Jewish. The left is sliding into this position of the Western left. So Marta came to me and said, Michael, it's a problem. And she had an idea. We invited from Knesset a very liberal lady, and she had a lecture about the women's rights in Palestine under, and the place for the gay rights in their vision of the society and so on. And we were trying to explain to Polish left that when you are holding in one hand the Palestinian flag and on the other hand the flag of LGBT, you don't understand that with that kind of flag you will not survive a second in Gaza. You know, you can, I'm sorry, I'm in the holy place right now, but you can go in Tel Aviv with your homosexual girlfriend or boyfriend holding his on hand or even kissing him with no problems, and you, with only the flag of LGBT, you could be easily killed. I remember, so I will not talk many more longer, I'm sorry, I understand it. But believe me, I was first time elected when I was 25. It was almost 30 years ago. So I can say that for last 30 years, the Polish taxpayers are paying me for talking. So I have to.
Thank you, Michal. I feel like I would love, David, if you could speak. I don't have my pen today, so I can't write the thoughts as they're coming to my head, but I think there's something, no, I'm not going to use it. It's Shabbat. So something in my mind about the understanding the relationship between Russia and Iran, the relationship between Israel and Russia. And there's a fine balance that has to be walked diplomatically, politically, militarily. And how does this also factor into the work that ELNET does when creating these relationships between Europe and Israel? Does that make sense? Like Russia, we have to talk about Russia here. This is an important player in what's happening right now.
Yeah, I would say that 5 years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine, it was much more of an issue then than it is now, although it's definitely in the background. I wouldn't say that if you asked, the Israeli leadership right now, what is their most important priority, would they, talk about Russia per se. We're talking about Iran, we're talking about the changing Middle East and the more immediate problems. But absolutely, Russia was a big factor in our work, especially after the latest invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And at that time, Russia was still controlling vast portions of Syria through the Assad regime, and under their hold were all the smuggling of the rockets and weaponry to Hezbollah that we're now seeing what damage it does when it's fired into Israel. So when the world wasn't really willing to take that problem on, and Israel had to do it on its own with its air force, we had to coordinate with the Russian air force that was over Syria in order to interdict the Hezbollah smuggling of weaponry from Iran to Lebanon through Syria under the Russians. So we had a very sensitive consideration when Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, what does Israel do when Russia is such a factor as a neighbor to the state of Israel to its north? Today the situation is very different. Russia is out of Syria. Assad collapsed, as you know. There's a new regime in Syria that we may like or not, but they've really pushed the Russians away. They've also pushed the Iranians away. Very interesting phenomenon happening in Syria today. But still, I think, Israel has sensitivities towards Russia that may not even be that logical anymore. But there's a large Jewish community there. There are a lot of concerns about that. There's also a complicated historical relationship between the Jewish experience in Ukraine. So there are many, many considerations. But if you take a step back and you look at, sorry for the diplomacy, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys here in this game, the Russians are certainly not on our side. They're not on the side of Europe, they're not on the side of Israel, they're not on the side of the United States. They're a very, very dangerous phenomenon that is not going away and actually getting more and more threatening certainly towards Eastern Europe, but Europe as a whole. And that drives this relationships as well, because Israel and Ukraine are very similar in the sense that they are the ones that are battle tested, that are under fire, that are creating constant technologies that everybody needs, including the great Pentagon, because the new technologies are coming out of the field all the time. So that I would like to, and I think we would all like to see more of a relationship between Israel and Ukraine when that will be possible, and we're always encouraging that in any way we can, and certainly working with our friends. You need to understand that Eastern Europe, in our mind, and myself as an Israeli American, but with an orientation coming from Israel, Eastern Europe is one of the most favorable and friendly places to Israel in the world today, and to the Jewish world. It may be an ironic, historic irony, but the geopolitics of it are such that these 10 countries, more or less, that Marta is covering and that Senator Kamiński comes from Poland, are becoming more powerful, more significant in Europe politics and in global politics. And they are countries that want a deeper relationship with Israel. And we see it with every delegation. I was on the ground with you, Marta, and we saw people that are now defense ministers that were going to, Israeli defense industries and going to the small startups and seeing amazing technologies that they need for themselves. And we could hear how they were talking to each other. And they were actually telling the Israelis, reminding the Israelis that you have friends, you have very important friends in this part of the world. Invest more in your friends. Don't just be anxious about your enemies. Invest in your friends. And that's what we try to do. So Russia is there, less of, I'd say, a critical factor than before. But look, in the end, if you take this up a level, it's the United States, Iran, China, Russia, the changing Middle East, the changing Europe. And we have I'm going back to my original point from the beginning of this discussion. There are many dangers, but there are tremendous opportunities now. The Gulf countries that are wealthy, that are vulnerable, that were just hit by Iran, that now are waking up to a reality that their neighbor, Iran, is psychopathic. It just attacked 12 countries for no reason. They had nothing to do with this fight. If you want to attack, then attack Israel and the United States. Why are you attacking the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Qatar and everyone? They were attacking everyone. So we have many opportunities now to build a new Middle East around Iran, even if Iran is still there, and hopefully it won't, but that regime, but even with that regime there, it's weakened, because let's not forget that the Israeli Air Force did some pretty interesting things over Iran, and that included Israeli women pilots that Marta has met with her women leader delegations that came to Israel. Tremendous things happened, so Iran is much weaker. The Abraham Accord countries are hungry for more relationships. We need to double down, build new alliances, and it includes Europe, because Israel's region is Cyprus and Greece and the Eastern Mediterranean. They're all facing Turkey together with Israel. And Greece and Israel are working together, Air Force to Air Force and government to government and economy to economy. So that part of Europe is very close. All of Central and Eastern Europe is another 10 countries very close to Israel because of their own existential threats with Russia. And they see Iran as a danger behind Russia. So we need to build this alliance with the Emirates, with Bahrain, in the future with Saudi Arabia, with Indonesia. These are the great economies on earth. And they need and want a relationship with us. And if we're wise in Israel, and we're in elections now, so, post the elections, we'll see what the next Israeli government is. There are tremendous opportunities to build this alliance, and it's going to include our friends in Europe.
Thank you, David. I just want to mention the very interesting thing about Ukraine, what they've done by... So Ukraine going to the Gulf countries to help them protect themselves from the drones and missiles sent from Iran, how brilliant it was circumventing NATO in a sense, there's no need to be in NATO now for Ukraine if they can go, if the theater of war has moved to places that it's never moved to before, and they don't need to get the permission of the US or NATO countries to be in NATO, Ukraine just pulled quite the maneuver. So I know that wasn't very articulate, but that was something that came to mind as you were speaking. And I'm just curious, let's spend a little time on Ukraine and what's happening there.
Yeah, I'm visiting Ukraine every month. I have a couple of hospitals with the wounded soldiers I'm visiting. I'm organizing help for them. It's in near Lviv, the city, big city on a Polish border. But I've been to Odessa, also to Kiev many, many times. When you're asking me about NATO and Ukraine, it's not an anecdote, but the NATO generals are coming to Ukraine to learn from Ukrainians. Today, Ukraine has a better army, except of those of the United States, than any other NATO country. This army is effectively defending Ukraine for almost 4 years from the second largest army in the world. They are defending Ukraine from the Russian army for 4 years. And the Russian army did some progress, but I'm sorry, my country collapsed in 2 weeks in 1939. France collapsed in 2 weeks in 1939. Holland collapsed in 48 hours in 1939. In 40, I'm sorry, it was 40. Okay, the Blitzkrieg was, Germany in 2 months. The German army was near Moscow in 41, in 2 months. And now they are 4 years. They made like 100 kilometers progress maximum. So the Ukrainian army today, it's 800,000 people, really brave, fighting all the time. The main problem for the Ukrainian army, it's a rotation. I talked to the people who were in trenches for 24 months. 24 months in trenches. It's from the psychological point of view, it's really, really, really dangerous. And today's war, when Ukrainian perspective is taken, it's totally different to wars we remember from our history. I was shocked first time when I went to this hospital. We organized a help for the seriously wounded soldiers. And I was a bit afraid of entering this place, from, let's say, obvious reasons. I was shocked what I saw, the age of the people. You are expecting the very young person. Not anymore, not in this war. I saw the people of my age. And I asked actually, why? And he said, one of the officers there said to me, Michael, on the front line, the youngsters, they cannot survive it. It's too heavy for them, psychologically. Only a very, very mature person could today sit in the trenches for hours because the drones are constantly over you. The psychological effect on the soldier who is fighting with the drone is totally different to any other type of fight and confrontation. One of the Polish soldiers who is fighting, actually, I'm as a senator, I was sponsoring the act in Polish Senate a couple of weeks ago in which we decriminalize the service in the Ukrainian army, because according to the Polish constitution, you cannot serve in the foreign army. It's a crime. You can only serve in the Polish army. So we make an exclusion for those Poles who want to serve in the Ukrainian army, they can do it. So I met those people, and they told me, with a huge experience, they told me you can escape from the tank when the tank is attacking you. You have at least internal feeling that you can escape. With the confrontation with the drone, you are paralyzed. I've been told by the very, very serious players, let's say, soldiers with an experience, that it's changing the situation, and the Ukrainians are trained to the new war. So I think that NATO today needs more Ukraine than Ukraine needs NATO.
Thank you, Michal. So I think we're almost out of time together, and maybe we'll have one or two questions, but I think what the three of you have conveyed is that we're in a very challenging, difficult, complex, continually evolving, changing moment in the world, and especially in the Middle East and in Europe. And ELNET has its mission to create stronger relationships between European leaders and Israeli leaders and European countries and Israeli, all those things. What is the most important thing that, so of its mandate, what is the most, where is ELNET spending the most time and attention right now?
Definitely on delegations. This is our number one activity. We'll of course organize other programs, strategic dialogues, conferences, but bringing people to Israel is the most effective tool we have today to make sure Israel has friends in Europe in high places.
And David, how can those of us who attended here today, how can we support the work of ELNET in a concrete way, even though we're not in Europe?
So even though it's Shabbat, I will answer that question. Doesn't want me to answer. So look, the best way to support us is, first of all, to spread this message, because most people in the community are focused on your local politics, your California politics, the AIPAC, Senate, and congressional races, and so on. But, you know, we all work very closely with Israel. We work with the IDF, we work with the various governments over the years, and we know how important they see Europe. The Israeli Navy is built on German technology. Did you know that? The Israeli battleships that protect the Israeli coast and the offshore gas are built and subsidized by the government of Germany. Israel has submarines out there, way out there, globally that protect Israel. They're not only built by Germany, they're also publicly subsidized by the German state as a result of everything that we've discussed today. And that's very, very important. So Europe is a critical player in Israel's future and in Israel's security. The fact that the Ukrainian war is taking place is only making the two parties closer. And I just want to give you an example that we didn't mention today. Israel's developed the best missile defense in the world, which is the various systems, the Arrow 3, it's going to be Arrow 4, Arrow 5, David Sling, Iron Dome, and laser systems, now everything in between that is happening. Germany, which is the world's 6th, 5th, 7th, depending on when you look, largest economy, Germany came to Israel and asked for the Arrow 3 because of the Russian threat. And Israel, because it trusts Germany, another historic irony, more than any other country with the exception of the United States, agreed to sell the Arrow 3 to Germany. The people that made the decision to buy the system came to Israel with ELNET. And probably our largest impact over the years was that one delegation of German, like the Armed Services Committee, their Armed Services Committee from their parliament, from their Bundestag, that came to Israel right after Putin invaded Ukraine. And they decided to purchase the system after ELNET enabled them, and it was a very difficult process to get them in, to see the Arrow 3 system. These were the legislators that voted in favor of purchasing it. The first phase of it was 3.5 billion euros, close to $4 billion. The second phase was another $4 billion. We're now at 8 billion and going way beyond that, just in terms of that. And over the last 2.5 years, when Israel had to race to replenish those munitions, to protect Israeli cities with the Arrow 3 system, much of that money was coming from that deal from Germany. So you need to understand how significant this is. It's not all about the United States anymore. We're in a very different world with many actors, many fronts, and having, you know, for us, the defense relationship is very, very important. Tackling anti-Semitism and those networks that the senator discussed of the new hate, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, and the money from Qatar, and all of the extremists on the streets, mainly of Western Europe, not Eastern Europe, because they didn't let in immigration from the Middle East, which is another reason why they don't face the same challenges that you see in France and UK and elsewhere. So we're working to take on those networks with the European governments. And the third thing we're doing through these delegations and all our work is helping to develop the Abraham Accords, to turbocharge, to double down, to expand that alliance in the Middle East that is so critically important to Israel's future and to Europe's future, because Europe needs a stable Middle East. So that's the main focus that we're part of.
Thank you, David. Do we have a moment for a couple questions? Yeah? Okay. Nathan.
Work? Okay. First off, thanks for coming all the way out here from Eastern Europe. I know that flight's a schlep. I've done it myself. I guess, like right now, we're coming up on elections in a couple of different countries. UK in particular will be in the next, I think, couple months. It's going to be, and we've seen kind of this weird, I hate to call it unholy alliance that's emerged between the far left and some of the I guess I'd call them sectarian Muslim interests or Islamist interests in a lot of these Western European countries in particular, Spain, UK, France. What do you make of that, and do you think we're going to see a little bit of a reaction or backlash just based on what you're seeing in those election results?
Sorry, okay. The main problem in this regard is the fact that the Muslims as a group are becoming a large part of a Western electorate itself. So you don't have to corrupt Western voters, or you don't have to cheat them or somehow influence them. Sometimes it's enough just to mobilize the Muslim voters. Believe me or not, I spent 11 years in Brussels as a member of European Parliament. In Brussels and in whole Belgium, there is an obligation of vote. So the people are obliged to vote unless they are not, and if they are not voting, they have to pay a special fine for the state. So obviously the poor Arab population is staying in the line during the voting day. The white population, the European population, which is more more wealthy, they can go for holidays, and they don't care about 100 or 200 euro. The Arabs not. You have 80%, 85% of the seats in the city council of the capital of Europe is taken by Muslims. 85% of seats in the capital of Europe is taken by Muslims. So we are in the Western countries, there is a really, really hard problem. It's not only because of the left as such is sliding into this direction. Their electorate is becoming Muslims. And obviously, unfortunately, there are still some right-wingers who are somehow supporting it. It's not like, this picture is not black-white, so black and white.
But to your question, it is causing somewhat of a counter-reaction. Many governments are strengthening their border protection or starting to vet immigration. There are places in Germany where they're conditioning citizenship on recognition of Israel. I mean, there is a lot going on. The French politics may change in the next elections. You mentioned the UK. The UK still has years. They have local elections coming up, but the French elections are next year. And Macron will be replaced, and maybe by a government that is more center-right or further right because of the immigration. In Germany, the rise of the far right, which the senator mentioned, is driven by the anxiety about immigration. So if these countries don't get a handle on it, it's going to overturn their political process. And we're seeing a lot of that populism in Europe on both extremes. So it's a very, very challenging problem for European societies, for those that let in mass immigration.
How do you do? Senator Kaminsky, I'm very interested in your perspective on the role the Catholic Church has played in fighting or not anti-Semitism and supporting Israel currently.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm not a very good person to answer this question because, unlike many Poles, I'm not a Catholic. So, you know, I will just about this, and not only about this, but also about your question. I will quote myself. Sometimes ago, when I've been asked by the Polish journalists about the Polish Church, I said, I'm not quite sure if the Polish bishops are believing in God, but I'm absolutely sure that they are not afraid of him. So I think that this answer is giving you a perfect, summary of what I'm thinking about the role. However, I have to underline, not being a Catholic, I have to underline the role of the Polish Pope, John Paul II, because this guy was really, really involved in the reconciliation, in admitting the sins of a Christian, not only Catholic, Christian side in this dialogue, let's say. And this guy made a lot, especially in the Polish society, because he helped very much. Till today, we are quoting John Paul II when we are talking in Poland about Jews and about Israel, and it is very, very useful, and he helped. So I think I have to be fair to mention that, talking, unfortunately, about, all other, let's say, burden of anti-Semitism, which is on shoulders of not only Catholics, but the Christians in the broader perspective. But today, it's also changing. You see many Christians, including Catholics, who are very pro-Israeli, who understand that it is our fight, and it's changing as well.
Last question.
I understand there's a simple answer to this question. The question is the pros and cons of an independent Palestinian state. And I understand one of the points is that they rejected it a long time ago. Could you comment on it?
I think in the period post-October 7th, any discussion of a Palestinian state in Israel today is not realistic. Plus, the Palestinians are divided in two between the Gaza entity ruled by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority ruled by a leader that has been in office without elections for, 20 years. So they have legitimacy issues, but more importantly, in Israel today, any realistic plan would not include that. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be done to improve the situation between Israelis and Palestinians, and we can have a whole seminar about that. But the issue of a Palestinian state per se, especially given what the senator said before, when the Palestinian Authority until this moment still funds families of terrorists based on the number of Jews that they killed or injured, is just absolutely unacceptable. And certainly in Israel today, battling on multiple fronts, post-October 7th, it's simply not seen as realistic even by the left in Israel, even by the so-called whatever's left of the peace movement. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just reality. It's just not in the cards for this generation. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years from now. Maybe there are many things that can be done to help that trajectory, but it's just not seen as a realistic program today in the eyes of Israelis. Now, in the eyes of some European countries, or many European countries, sure, but it's really not where reality is, or where the Middle East per se is, or where the Israeli state of mind is. Although, again, there are many, many things that need to be done to stabilize the Middle East, and of course, the Palestinian issue is central to that.
Hi. To me, it seems like Israel is the keystone of the Middle East, and in a sense then to the world. So that I can explain it to someone else, what would the world be like if Israel ceased to exist? And if you care to take time, how dangerous is Mamdani?
Okay. Mamdani rules a great city, but that city isn't in Europe. And I'm from New York, so we can talk about Mamdani all day if you want. No, I mean, it's a reflection of what's happening in American politics, and it's not just Mamdani, it's a whole movement, and it's popping up everywhere, and it's, I believe, and I think many in the room will share that concern about where American politics are trending on the extremes, and that's certainly an example of it. The Middle East without Israel is something that, in my mind, is unthinkable. But if anyone thinks that Israel is the source of all the tsoirus in the Middle East, then I think we have a lot to learn together, because the Middle East has its own structural problems that have nothing to do with the state of Israel, and in fact, Israel being there has stabilized the Levant in many, many significant ways. The Kingdom of Jordan would not be there today without Israel, and every day, again, we talked about politics and what happens behind the scenes. I mean, that's a perfect example. Israel and its immediate neighbors have very strong security, intelligence, relationships that are ongoing. We have the same, by the way, with most countries in Europe, if not all of them, because everyone has a shared interest in fighting terrorism. And if you ask the Mossad today, if there's anyone in Europe that won't answer the phone when the Mossad calls them, everyone will, because the relationships are very deep and they're always there, no matter what the politicians say up above. The Spanish prime minister can be outrageously rabid about Israel, but his security services are working with Israel as he's condemning Israel publicly. It's just there's no correlation between the two levels of reality there. So the Middle East would be much more dangerous. The senator said himself that when he talks to his colleagues in Europe, that without the IDF there to hold on these forces of terrorism and radicalism in the Middle East, they would pour into Europe, not just trickle in, but pour in. And there's a big difference of degree there. So we believe that Israel is a source of stability in the Middle East. There are issues now with the way the Middle East is developing and the way the Gulf countries are feeling. On the one hand, they feel that this war is endangering them. On the other hand, they're terrified of Iran. They're looking to Israel for support, but they're also anxious sometimes about Israel. In their mind, Israel overreaches. In our mind, post-October 7th, Israel can't be the way it was. You don't just sit and wait for these monsters to just become so large that you can't take them apart, even with the United States, like Iran, but you have to act early. So there are many dynamics out there, but I don't think that it would be realistic today to even think about a scenario without Israel's existence. And in many ways, it helps the Middle East, in important ways it helps the Middle East, and it helps Israel's immediate neighbors, and it helps the Abraham Accord countries and those countries that are seeking a better future. And going back to that original point, this is an alliance that needs to be consolidated and built over time together with the United States and our friends in Europe.
Well, I want to say thank you. I think... Okay, absolutely.
Hi. My name is Tom Flesch. I'm chair of ELNET US. And I want to thank you, I want to thank you all for coming today. It's a real pleasure and an honor for us to be here and to present to you the work that we are doing. Our work has been very, very, very successful in ways that you see and in many other ways that you might not necessarily see. But the end results are we're making progress, and we're making progress with some of the European countries, which you wouldn't believe are actually behind us, and they're supporting what we're doing. But they're doing it in a very delicate way because they have their own elections to be mindful of and all different kinds of things. But I wanted, again, just thank you so much. And we are really privileged to be here and to have this great outcome. And to Jill, for your hospitality, thank you so much. Our cast here. I don't know if you know, but we invite you to join us. We have most every Monday morning briefing, a Monday morning briefing with, we have people speaking on these issues of the day, and they're very informative and very well received. You can find out more about it, www.felnetus.org, and or you can get information from Jill. And Rabbi, thank you so much. And just a side note, I have somewhat of an affiliation here at the synagogue. I've been here before because my relatives are members here too. So they're not here today, but so I have an affiliation, and I've heard a lot about the synagogue, and I know it well, and I say, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it. Shabbat Shalom.